Welcome to the Earthworks Podcast, where our team will share the jargon of carbon from many of our turf friends from the past 30 years.
Hey, good morning, everyone. This is Kevin Hicks again with another Earthworks podcast, and I've got on with me today Gary Deters. He is with the University of Minnesota, and this one's been a couple of years in the making. He kind of dodged me a few times and came into the booth at GIS this year and said, "All right, Kevin, I think I'm ready to go." He was between jobs and leaving the superintendent position and joining the University of Minnesota. So we're going to dive into that here in a little bit. But welcome, Gary. Thanks for finally agreeing to or acquiescing to come on. And I'm excited about this hour. It should be good.
Thanks for having me. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, no, it'll be fun. So I told Gary before we got on that I was going to read his Twitter bio because that's kind of how we got to know each other. And so he's turf grass research at University of Minnesota, Class A GCSA member, avid golfer, world traveler, which we're going to get into a little bit, health and fitness, wannabe ski bum, but he lives in Minnesota, so that's kind of a conflict. Star Wars and Seinfeld geek. So I'm going to roll all that stuff into this conversation here. But let's get started with kind of your background and where you got your start. I know you were at St. Cloud Country Club for a while, which I had a connection to through my college golf time. But yeah, start at the top. Where are you from?
Okay.
How'd you get here?
Sure. So I grew up in central Minnesota in a small town called Albany. And so if anyone has ever traveled from the Twin Cities to Fargo or from Fargo to the Twin Cities, you'll drive right by it on Interstate 94. And I've been kind of thinking about this question because I knew it was going to kind of come up. And really getting into the business is somewhat almost a miracle, kind of, when I think about it, because growing up, my parents didn't introduce me to golf or anything like that. And so I was a baseball player. I love baseball and didn't even consider golf. And one time, I think I was in seventh grade. I was at a friend's house, my not next door neighbor, but he lived down the road, childhood friend, Brian Heine. And he had a golf club and some golf balls. And like I said, seventh grade, probably 13, whatever age that is.
Mm-hmm.
And hit some balls. Don't remember how well I hit them, all of them, but I know a couple of them went over the tree line. And thinking about it, it was probably 60 feet. It wasn't very far.
Right.
But they went over the tree and it was like kind of cool. And so I don't remember how long we did that or whatever, but I went home and I told my mom, hey, could I get some golf clubs? And we grew up. We didn't have much, and just mom, I had a brother. My mom stayed home with us and my dad went to work. And, getting, when you're a kid, you don't think about these things, but getting these golf clubs, getting my dad, who had nothing growing up, to get us these clubs, thinking about it now was awesome because I can't believe it, thinking that dad actually stopped somewhere, probably a Goodwill or something like that, picked up 3 clubs, a 9-iron, a 7-iron, and like a 3-wood, just old school clubs. And we were fortunate where we grew up. I grew up north of Albany, 3 miles in the country, surrounded by farms.
Mm-hmm.
And we weren't on a farm. We were just a house and a big yard. And so we started, just me and Brian Heinen and my brother, and then a friend named Bernsey, just started playing golf kind of in our yard. And we had 2 holes back and forth. One was probably, now it's like a half pitching wedge, not even, it's like 70 yards. But we would be using 3-woods and then back kind of the same way, but it was uphill. So it was a little further. And so that was kind of the introduction into golf. And
architecture for that matter.
Kind of, yeah. Because it was so bad, because I think about it, we were putting through, 2.5-inch, 3-inch grass. I dug out a little hole, that was our cup. And it's kind of funny. I haven't thought about that for a while, but yeah, that's what we did. And the first time I went golfing, I think it was like a year or two later. I went to Albany Golf Club, didn't own a set of clubs, so I had to rent them. And I went with a guy named Paul Marek. And it's kind of funny thinking about this because we kind of gave each other like nicknames for the golfers at the time. And so, right, who were the golfers back in 86, 87, right? Jack Nicklaus had just won the Masters.
Yep.
There was Arnold Palmer, big names, and Greg Norman. And so I was Jack Deters, and then my buddy Bernsey was his name is Greg. So it was bad. Greg Norman Block. And then Paul Marek has the absolute perfect name. He was Arnold Paul Marek. So it just kind of flowed. And so the first time I went to Albany Golf Club, played, and I putted over the green because I was used to putting on long turf, way over the green. I didn't know how hard to hit it. And so me and Burns, we got a locker every year at Albany Golf Club, and we each lived 3 miles away from town. And so we each biked down. We'd meet there and play. And so that was kind of phase one. Phase two was I was a junior in high school, and I met somebody who at the time, you don't know who you're going to meet. And maybe this connection. I'm not sure if you do or not. But I met Chris Trittabaugh. Okay. And he was in my school. He just moved to Albany, and he was a freshman. I was a junior, and we were introduced from a mutual friend of ours. And this person that introduced us actually became kind of he's well known in Minnesota golf. His name's Adam Dooley. Mm-hmm. He won like state am. He played golf at the University of Minnesota. Great guy, great golfer. And he introduced us because they knew each other. And so kind of phase two was really, if you think about it, his dad was the superintendent of our schools in Albany. And had he not taken that job, I never would have met Chris.
Right.
And never would have probably got into the golf industry.
So Chris's dad was the school superintendent?
Yep.
Interesting. Huh, I did not know that connection.
Yep. So had I never met Chris, I wouldn't be in golf. I don't know where I'd be in life. It's just kind of one of those weird deals where somebody else taking a job led to me, getting to know Chris. We became really good friends at the time. So once I graduated from high school, I went to St. Cloud State, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I thought, well, I love baseball. I'll be a teacher coach. So I went to school for those kind of aspirations, and then kind of got cold feet. And now I still don't know what I want to do. Well, I'm going to do this. So I transferred to the University of Minnesota. Me and Chris became roommates there. And it wasn't golf yet. It was something else. And
was he into it?
Yeah, he was into it. Yep.
So he was already on
at that point. Yep. He was already in the program at the University of Minnesota. And so the thing I decided to get into, it was another fail on my part. It's like, I can't do this. One of those deals where you realize you're kind of in over your head because one, probably I was probably smart enough, and two, I was an awful student. I hated studying, I hated reading, I hated doing all these things, and so that's not a very good combo.
Sounds very, very relatable for me, though.
Yeah, and so I remember having a conversation with Chris because he was already in it. He was, so this was the year before so this was 98 that I went to the University of Minnesota. In 97, I started working at Albany Golf Club on the grounds crew. And it was just a summer job. Chris was working there, and we just had just a great time. It was so fun. Chris's brother Adam worked there, and we just had so much fun. Tom Kasner, our boss, was unbelievable. Just one of the great guys to work with. His assistant Mickey Satzer, another just fun.
Right.
It was
Right.
fun to go to work.
Yeah.
Yep. And so I knew I liked working there. And then after my first year at the U, knowing just kind of that I don't know what to do. And I was working at Town and Country Club just to make money and something I knew how to do.
Hmm.
And I had a conversation with Chris, like, how long do you think it would take me to get done with school if I go into turf? He's like, you're thinking about switching? It's like, yeah, I like it, and kind of I don't know what else to do. So uh next day I went into the horticultural science office and made the switch and kind of went to turf school, and the rest is history. But those kind of three things that happen along the way, getting introduced,
Yep.
Chris's dad taking that job, and then becoming friends with Chris and working with them, and had really led to me getting into the industry.
Well, and that parallels a lot of how people move through the industry is just connections and who you
Mm-hmm.
know, and yeah, that's I got to start as a caddy, and that was my in
Hmm.
to the game. And but like you, rode our bikes to go play golf at the local courses, and just never gave it up. It's
Yep.
pretty
Yep.
cool. So then, so Dr. White's still at
Yep.
Minnesota at that time. So he was
Yep.
your turf professor. So you
Mm-hmm.
get out, and then what?
So, worked at Town and Country, did my internship while in school there. And so that was 2001, December 2001. So then it was, all right, now what? Graduate. And there were jobs available at the time, assistant jobs and second assistant jobs. And I ended up getting the second assistant job at Oak Ridge Country Club
Hmm.
in Hopkins,
Hmm.
uh, working with Keith Scott and Craig Hendrickson. And so I was there a year. It was about 10 months, something like that. And I ended up getting the assistant job at St. Cloud Country Club.
Okay.
And so, yep. So that was 2003. So I was the assistant at St. Cloud for 11 years. Or was it 12 years? I can't remember anymore. 11 or 12 years. And then got promoted to superintendent. And that was 2000, end of 2013. So, superintendent for 6 years at St. Cloud. And from there, you know, so I was there for 17 years. Yeah, so it was 11 years. I wanted something different.
Right.
My wife and I, we traveled to the Twin Cities a lot, and just trying to look for something else. I was feeling kind of the pressure at St. Cloud, my own pressure, right?
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
own, I think, success. Trying to get better, trying to keep delivering good results, great results with budget that's going nowhere, decreasing in some aspects, and
Yeah.
how am I going to keep doing this? And so 2019 was not like great for me mentally, and so that's when I started. I need to do something else
Hmm.
and find something else. And my wife would be like, yeah, she was supportive, but she's like, well, what else can you do? And so the job came open at the university, the turf grass research field facility manager. So it was managing turf at the U, and luckily enough, I got it. And so that's what took me to the university.
So talk about your role there. What are you doing? Because there are no turf students currently, correct? Or are there?
We have some. That's kind of always one of the things that I'm not 100% sure how many. We have some grad students that are working on some things. We
Okay.
had a turf student last year. Um,
And they're
And
just running through the horticulture program, or
yep,
okay.
yep.
Okay.
So back when we were in turf school, there were probably 15 turf students, in
Yeah.
Dr. White's class.
Right.
And then it just kind of, right, like a lot of universities that have the turf schools, they kind of went away to a certain extent.
Yep.
So my role there as field facility manager was helping the researchers and helping Dr. Eric Watkins just help with the research and taking care of the plots. And we have, I think it ends up being about 30,000 square feet of research greens there.
Okay.
And one on about 22,000 square feet on a USGA green, and then 10 to 20 on a native green. And so having my golf course experience was, ideal for them.
Sure.
Plus just knowing turf in general for all the other things, because there's tall fescue, Kentucky bluegrass, perennial ryegrass, fine fescues. There's all those other things that are going on in drought studies and irrigation, dealing with the irrigation and how much to water. And so that's what I kind of transitioned to. And my first, and you'll understand this, I guess. My first week on the job was March 16th of 2020.
Oh,
so, right. Yeah.
Wow.
So, yep. So it was, another, like, oh boy, here we go. I was just hoping to, at the time, everyone had no clue
To
what
keep
was
your
going to
job.
happen. Yeah, exactly. It's like, I just want to start so that I have a job. What happens if my job disappears? And then now I have nothing. And so it was bizarre time to start. So I went to work the first day and met with Eric, and then second day met with a couple of the researchers. And by day 3, we were all booted off campus.
Right.
So work from home, it's like, oh, okay.
As a maintenance supervisor, you're going to work from home. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, exactly. So, okay, well, how am I going to learn the property if I'm not there?
Right.
And so, we came up with some solutions for me to look at maps, and I kind of came up with a turf plot page to describe everything that's going on in this, in the research and in this part of the map. And it was not easy, and it took a while. It really, being there was needed to learn anything. And
for sure.
And right. And then unfortunately, because of COVID and the restrictions and things like that, there was no one around. It was just kind of, I was allowed to work after, I think it was like 2 weeks, something like that. First part of April, I was able to go back on campus and do some things. And so that was nice. But again, no one was around. So it was just kind of learning on my own. And
right.
One of the researchers was there a little bit. So I was able to ask questions and learn a little bit. But really, just, it was just not easy at that time.
Yeah. Couldn't have picked a tougher time to transition.
Yep.
So what's your interaction or your involvement with the actual research? Because I know, you and I have talked a little bit, but you're pretty open with kind of your outreach within the program, within community. So I kind of want to dive into that a little bit as far as what kind of research is going on there. I mean, I know there's turf breeding, but there's got to be other stuff. So kind of dive into that a little bit and talk about what the programs do these days. Because I know now Brian Morgan was already gone, correct?
Yep, he was gone.
But Dr. Watkins continued some of his research as far as the community benefits and things along those lines, right?
Yeah, there's always ongoing research, and one of the great things that Dr. Watkins does is he can get grants, and
Right.
so there's just a lot of research going on, and that's why as I continued to work there, you realize that it's pretty chaotic because we have 10 to 12 acres of turf, kind of sprinkle mostly around TRO, which is the Turf Research Outreach and Education Center. That's kind of the main
Okay.
bulk of where our research is, but there's also other things around campus. And so it's like I said, it was kind of chaotic, but organized to a good extent, because they have to be. You have to know what's going on, and that's where communication really played a big role. And when I went there, it was really learning what's going on, and there were questions, mostly asking my input on certain things, especially the golf course side of things. The research side of things, just, mostly, over my head, because it's pretty in-depth stuff,
Right.
and the details are amazing. And, I honestly don't know a lot of what they do yet, just because I'm not doing the DNA stuff or things like that. It's just not part of my role. So a lot of stuff behind the scenes that the researchers do, I don't really know. And sometimes we take what they're learning into the field. And that's kind of when I would help prepare plots
Yeah.
for seed, and then apply water and fertilize, mow, just observe, I
Yeah,
guess.
but
Just observe.
you're essentially
Yep.
implementing the protocols then, right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And
Right.
one of the researchers, Andy Holman, who is out there all the time with me, we talk mostly every day when we're at work, and just to kind of go over things and to make sure I'm doing it right. Because my one of my biggest fears when I went there was I didn't want to screw anything up.
Right.
There's
Yeah,
because
I'm sure you've got research projects that are years in the making and years
yep,
to completion, right? So you don't want to
for
mess anything
sure.
up in the process.
Yep. So there was a lot of things that I didn't know either, and it's kind of amazing, and I think a lot of superintendents who would go into that type of role would really learn a lot. And like, man, I didn't know that. Well, because you're just it's not a part of the golf course life.
Yeah.
Um, and working with fine fescues on a daily basis, and I had to take care of fine fescue greens, and I'd never done that before.
Hmm.
And so, trying to learn what to do was it took time, and just trying to just do the right thing, I guess, and make sure I was doing things right. Like, for example, we would have plots of fine fescues, and Andy would say, "Okay, it's going to be hot today. Don't don't mow the fine fescues in the afternoon." And it'd be like, "Oh, okay." You don't really know how, I guess, finicky they can be in the heat, and or if it's dry, when you don't deal with them on a daily basis,
Hmm.
if that makes sense, right? It's like I was used to bent grass and uh, bluegrass and some perennial ryegrass, but not really fine fescue lawns and research.
Right.
So just kind of learning that, it took a while. And my first year, I would say, it was definitely not a wasted year. It was a learning year. And then going into year two, so I've been there 3 full seasons. and 3 full summers, I should say.
Yeah.
And going into the second one, you try to learn from your, I don't know, not necessarily mistakes, but just learned what you learned from the previous year
Yeah.
and just get better. And I was better. And then, by year three, then the summer year three, you have a grasp of what's going on and what you need to do and what you don't need to do, I guess, too. That's part of it is, and talking to the right people and making sure that you communicate, like when you observe something, communicate that, hey, do I need to do anything here? Or can I just let it go? Like, for example, here's another example. So Dr. Watkins might have a group there, and it's NTEP fine fescue lawn. And it was kind of long, but sometimes that's not a bad thing. And I would just text them and say, hey, do you want this mowed? I know you're having people.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want this area mowed today? And say, no, you don't need to. Thanks for asking. Kind of one of those things. Just right. My first year, I'd have no idea.
Yeah.
You just
not
right.
Unlike
You just don't know.
Not unlike looking
and
at
so
the
those
golf
are
calendar,
some,
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. You just don't know until you go through it.
Sure.
And you just try to call upon your, at that point, your knowledge and just go with it, I guess.
So, two questions. Maybe there isn't one, but what would be the average time span of a study? Let's say if there's, you talk about fine fescue lawns. Is that a 1 year, a 3 year? Is it an ongoing? Are some of them open ended? I'm curious because you read all these
Sure.
research reports and gosh, how
Yep.
that was the culmination
Yep.
of how long? I don't know.
Yep. Yeah, good. I mean, it's a great question. And sometimes people ask me things, I say, I don't know, because, but for example, we have the NTEP, we have NTEP bentgrass, we have NTEP fine fescue fairway, fine fescue lawn, and then last fall we started to grow in a bentgrass fairway height. Okay. And typically, like the bentgrass one, we grew it in it was the fall of 2020. For observation, I think you have that grow-in period. So 2021. So then I think it was July of 2021, it was ready for, observing, I guess. And
sure.
Yeah, exactly. And, there was also the grow-in, ranking, how quickly certain varieties were. And then there are some unnamed varieties yet because they're new and new cultivars.
Yeah.
And so that one is like from 2020 to 2025, something like that. It's like 5 years.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, how most of them are. They're like 5 years from growing to the final season. It's like a contract with NTEP, and it's you manage it based on the agreement. And
so the contract is actually with NTEP and not with the seed producers or the breeders or so forth. It's more of an NTEP.
I think so. I think that's kind of how it works, where the seed producers send it to NTEP and then they send it to us.
Interesting.
I think. Yeah, I think that's how it works. So if they have a new cultivar that they want to put in the NTEP and we manage it.
So as a recovering golf course superintendent, well, both of us actually, one of my maybe unfounded criticisms of NTEP is that they're less real world than some of the conditions that we see on a golf course. Can you can you influence that at all and say, look, this thing needs to be pounded, or it's got to have traffic run across it? I always try to do, my assistants always called it the KevTep trials, because it was my own protocol, but we did it in the most abusive conditions on the property, just to try to put it through its paces and look at different cultivars. But I'm sure it's all part of the protocol, but I would imagine your input's got to be valuable.
Definitely. And one of the things I try to do as the manager is I try to manage it like I would a golf course.
Sure.
You're correct on like the traffic part of it. It's not getting daily play or anything like that. But as far as the protocols I would follow, the mowing I would follow, the irrigation, how I would fertilize, I guess. I tried to do it as best as I possibly could as a golf course superintendent, or a former superintendent in my case. And I can see, I think I know what you're talking about, where I could see like maybe the people or the place that's managing it might not have that type of thought, where it's like, hey, this is for golf. I'm going to manage this exactly like a golf course, because if you don't have that necessary experience, I guess.
Right. Sure.
How do you know how to manage something if you've never managed something like that on a full scale?
Yeah, I would think having somebody like yourself on site like that has got to be of value. Now, okay, so let's shift gears a little bit, because I know a lot of the work that the university is doing is with non-golf cultivars and non-golf applications. So what have you learned there? I mean, we talked a little bit at GIS this year about my recent election to the Soil Conservation District Board, and kind of what you guys, how that relates to what some of the research that you've been involved with. What's going on in that regard?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that are happening that it could be connected with golf, but a lot of home lawn items, low input turf. There's things, drought studies, things like that. We have a rainout shelter that is pretty fantastic. That completely covers a plot, and so we've been doing that. And irrigation efficiency. We're trying to work with that with the outreach. And I didn't mention this, and we did talk about this at GIS, where I did take on a new role in October, where I'm the Lawn Water Conservation Educator. So I'm shifting from the field facility manager into this other role, where I actually have done that already. And I'm still going to be helping with whatever they need me to.
Okay.
But the outreach is really a big thing for us as well. Just trying to convince people that you don't need to irrigate as much as you think you do, homeowners and maybe businesses. And
so what have been the most successful campaigns, I guess, in that regard? What are homeowners and landowners receptive to when you go to? I assume the outreach is meetings, maybe fairs and things like that. So what are they receptive to? Number one, and number two, what, maybe it doesn't come up, but I would be curious to know what the perception of golf is with a different group of people that you're now interacting with.
Yep, sure. So, I know many of the people that I've talked to and that come up to us during our outreach events, they're receptive. They're the ones that are out there going to these things. They're receptive to low input turf. to bee lawns is kind of a big thing recently, to find fescues, to, hey, how can I convert this to that? For example, we had, and I'm speaking for the homeowner, where we had some trees removed and now we're full sun
Right.
and there's this bare area in the back. We don't have irrigation. What do I do? Things like that come up. So,
Sure.
those people are very receptive to the low input. We just try to give them the information, point them out to our website, to the extension website. There's tons and tons of information out there that we've been working on, that the researchers have found that can help people.
Right.
If just to try to get things established is really one of the big things. So that's a big thing. The golf course side, having me coming from the golf course side, it's I there was one outreach event I went to recently, and I was helping a person, and I just mentioned, yeah, I came from the golf course side of things. I was a golf course superintendent, and this person said, sorry to hear that. And it's like, you know, I'm proud of what I did and what I accomplished and all that stuff in the golf industry, and I know that, I'd say the majority of golf course superintendents really care
Right.
and do the right thing. And, so that's part of a conflict I have too, because I know I have a speaking engagement coming up too, and it's with master gardeners.
Mm.
And, I, and I know just from talking to some coworkers or whatnot that, it doesn't, they don't like golf courses.
Sure.
They don't, or some people don't. And I think it's really the misperceptions. And yesterday I was talking with one of the researchers, and I told him that, knowing what I know about golf course superintendents, knowing I was one, and knowing that I tried to do the best with saving water. Hey, it's going to rain tomorrow. Awesome. I can shut the irrigation off. Where we're always thinking about the weather.
Yeah.
And if we could, if you had, 150 acres of turf that you manage, and compare it to 150 acres of homeowners with irrigation systems, who would you rather, so that, let's just give each homeowner a quarter acre. So you're talking, whatever the math is, 600 homes, 600 homeowners with an irrigation system, or a lawn. Who would you rather be managing that 150 acres? I mean, giving a homeowner with no knowledge of turf an irrigation system is, I don't know, like, would you, on the first day of on the job, would you let one of your workers manage your irrigation system at work? I mean, you wouldn't. Or hand your, teenage kid the keys to the car and say, all right, go learn. It's
Go teach yourself. Don't hit anything.
Yeah. So, that's kind of one of the things that, it's because they'll hire lawn care companies to do their home lawn services, and putting down. I've seen it, where they're putting in March. A couple years ago, I witnessed my neighbor lawn care company putting down pre-emergence in March in Minnesota.
Yeah.
And, they just put their check mark done. Well, their home's done. Once they leave the property, do they care that the fertilizer is not going to get to where it needs to, or the pre-emergence not going to get where it needs to? And
it's
do
been
its
an eye
job.
opener for me selling into that industry that
Sure.
and to a certain degree, it's hard to fault them because they're trying to.
Yep.
It's as much a cash flow
Yep.
issue as anything else,
Hmm.
and in order to keep people. But man, can we tweak that formula and that program a little bit to mirror a little more closely some of the environmental conditions and the pest pressures, right? I
Yep.
mean, just
Yep.
because it's March
Hmm.
doesn't mean we have to be rolling our trucks out. And
Hmm.
I would imagine you probably have a lot of the same conversations at this point. But
Yep.
the water conservation thing for non-golf groups that I speak with, I think is something that's been a real an opportunity, and B, an eye opener for a lot of
Hmm.
people, because if for no other reason, superintendents are so uh, their task with water management is so tied to a playability issue
Yep. For
that a
sure.
homeowner doesn't have, and so
Yep.
they have to be more judicious with the resource.
Hmm.
But it's also, we're under a spotlight in this industry, and I think it's something that
Yep.
people don't realize. It's golf is bad. Well, no, you might want to dive a little deeper into that. And I would think,
Yep.
somebody with your background's got a great opportunity to kind of bridge those two worlds a little bit. And
Yeah,
good
I'm
luck with that.
definitely, yeah, I know, thanks. And part of it too is, yeah, I don't know how it's gonna go. I really don't. Trying to bridge that gap and trying to explain what I did as a superintendent,
Sure.
where, like, for example, again, learning what how I did, I guess, from my boss, and watching how every golf course superintendent is going to manage the course the way they feel it needs to be.
Yeah.
uh, right, I mean, you have 100 different superintendents, they're all going to do it a different way. They have different goals, they have different whatever. And so I think it was probably my third year as superintendent. um I put down like a half a pound of N on our fairways for the season,
Right.
and it was all soluble, and it was going where it needs to go. And you're not putting down, okay, I'm gonna, like the old school way, and observing those old school ways of, all right, I'm gonna put down 2 pounds of slow release N on these fairways. How much uh, gets to where it needs to go, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, 3 days later, you have a downpour that you weren't expecting, things like that. So, I think, just from my observation, and it's gotten way, way better, obviously, um, with the association and kind of the up and comers. Like, when I was doing this, you've got the new turf varieties and cultivars that courses are using, where they don't even use fungicides anymore, except for maybe the snow mold app. Um, they put very little N down. And I always I always wondered, because St. Cloud Country Club was right on the Mississippi River,
Right.
and I really cared about that, and I really wanted to make sure that there was never any environmental issue
Coming
that
coming
came
from
up.
you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
heck yeah. Kind of freaked me out a little bit. So, I always tried to do the right thing all the
Yeah.
time. and
Yeah.
and but I always wanted to know, like, okay, if you took water samples before you got to the golf course, and then water samples after, you know, I would like to think, I guess, that it would tell a story that I'm doing the right thing. Uh, I don't have any of that, but I like to at least think, that
Yeah.
they would see results and say, yeah, this person and this team is doing a good thing.
Well, and that turf
And
system is doing what we know it can do. I mean, I've got that
yep,
data, and I know there's been that data on the influent and effluent sides of
yep,
waterways through golf courses. It's great data. I would love to know, getting back to the water conservation or the water consumption issue. And it may be a little bit different where you are than where I am in the West, but ask a homeowner how many gallons of water he used on his lawn last year. I'll bet
Yep.
there isn't anybody that knows that, but I'll bet you most superintendents are well aware of their consumption.
Sure. Yep.
So, that those kinds of things I think would be pretty valuable for them to realize that, golf is pretty judicious with their resources.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we like you said, it's really comes down to like the playability aspect and just trying to deliver a great product, and the last thing we want to do is overwater because of all of the things that come with it, disease, poor playability,
or over fertilize, or whatever it is. Yeah, I'm working a little bit, and I've had him on the podcast. I'm working with Brian Bowl at Interlochen. And
Brian.
One of his presentations to his membership is changing to a different cultivar and a different, back to bent grass on the fairways. He expects to save an awful lot of money on fungicides. Well, that's a story that could be told, right? I mean, it's a pretty interesting way to think about things. Not for us, but I think for the general public, that's not something they even consider. But I think that type of consideration, the savings and the reduced inputs, is something every superintendent is looking at. So it's a huge positive.
Yeah, there have been a number of clubs in the Twin Cities that have all regressed in the last 5-10 years, and I've been able to play several of them, and it's amazing to see the differences. And this winter it has been a bad winter too. You think about that, and think about some of the clubs that were the POA farmers coming out of winter, and great, now we're gonna have to deal with dead turf and getting that back, and fertilizing and watering and doing all those things. With the new varieties of bentgrass, you have more of a security blanket. You don't have to do those types of things.
Yeah. So this new position, this is a departure from what you were doing when you first signed on with the university, right?
Correct.
Will you do both, or is that?
No.
Okay.
We did hire another person for my old position, but the plan with Dr. Watkins is for me to help. Just I'm a backup.
Yeah.
My golf course knowledge is still needed, I guess. If I can be a listener and give my opinions if they ask for them. I'll be helping this person transition into it, because this person has no golf course experience.
Okay.
Has never used a walking greens mower or anything like that. So, part of that is still needed, and I still want to, be a part of the golf industry, and I'll be helping with like the watering aspect of the new NTEP bentgrass fairway. So the involvement is still there, and it's kind of like a percentage, like you can just say you're 75% new roll, 25% whatever they need me to help with, seeding, whatever, and that's kind of always been my my philosophy is, hey, if you need help, just kind of let me know, and but you have to let me know.
That's very cool. No, that's a neat opportunity, I think, because it's you bring a unique set of skills to the table that I think can definitely benefit the community. So that's exciting. So do you, I guess, 30,000 foot view, at least at the University of Minnesota, do you ever see a turf program, an actual turf student program coming back?
At the St. Paul campus, probably not. Where we'll have a few students or two. I know the University of Minnesota Crookston has a turf program,
and it's pretty active, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. Yep.
Yeah.
And I know Sam Bauer, who helps with that, and I know Dr. Watkins helps just being on with the University of Minnesota, and I don't know the instructor over there on a full time. I'm not sure if it's Sam or if Sam just helps, but I don't know. But it's yeah, that's a good question. I think it probably won't, but we have the other connection with
Yeah.
the University of Crookston.
Yeah. No, I was surprised to hear how many students they've got. And
Hmm.
if somebody's never been to Crookston, you have to mean to go to Crookston because it's a pretty unforgiving place
I've
to.
never been there.
Yeah, I've been there once, and it's pretty unforgiving part of the country. I know there's it's not South Dakota State, but there's a program in Sioux Falls that's actually got a lot of students
Okay.
at this point. So there's some around.
Yep. And NDSU, I know,
Yeah,
has a program.
yeah.
So
Well,
um,
I for one hope that it kind of, this is a cyclical thing that I think we're seeing,
yep.
more opportunities with assistant positions being unfilled. I think there's some opportunity, and hopefully some of these institutions can rebuild something and get some good grads out there. Hopefully,
Yeah.
so
And that's the amazing thing, I think, especially at the University of Minnesota. I think that there's a great opportunity for, a student that is driven, that can, take on uh, a big part of the, being in the turf industry if
yeah.
if they want to, if that's where they want to be. Um, just there's room for it. It's
So
always looking.
are there opportunities as far as horticulture goes, or is there still a, a formal program for that kind of thing? Is there anything related that you would suggest? Obviously for me, my tune changed a lot through my career, but I at this point I'm seeing an awful lot of superintendents say, "Gosh, Gary, you've been on the crew for 4 or 5 years now. You've got a tremendous aptitude for the industry. I Let me train you." I'm seeing a lot more of those circumstances where superintendents are taking known commodities on their team and giving them the on the job training, if you will. But is there something within that university system besides Crookston that could feed into that? That a superintendent could say, hey, take this program. It's a great foundation, and then I'll finish the job with you, sort of thing.
So you're kind of breaking up. I don't know if it was my internet or your internet, but you just could you back up a little bit just
Sure.
to.
I'm just curious if there's anything within the University of Minnesota system that um, someone in golf could direct an individual that's interested in being in the industry. Is there a program that you would say, hey, there's a pretty good parallel here. Let's get him into this program and give him the foundation to get start. Because I'm seeing a lot of superintendents kind of finishing um, people in the industry so that they're prepared, but they know what it's a known commodity at that point. They know the individual and they know they've got an aptitude and a work ethic that
Mhm.
would be valuable in the industry. Is there anything there that might parallel that?
Hmm. I know that they have the Great Lakes School. I know I know Eric has been Dr. Watkins has been a part of that, and
Yeah.
Sam Bauer has been a part of that with Dr. Koch and Doug Soldat.
Yep.
Just there's that. I know there are opportunities like that where um, somebody could easily go to or take some classes and better themselves and I think uh, knowing what I know about just the university in general, it would have been so good for me as a student to work with the researchers like we have now. Back in the day, it was Dr. White, and
Right.
I didn't know what else was there or who else was there really. Maybe I just don't remember, but the researchers now that I work with, they're, obviously very intelligent and they know a lot about kind of the inner workings of plants and identification, and like Andy Holman, the guy has been seeding and working with seed and growing things from seed for a long time. That guy knows a lot about seed and what works well. And, I brought up some things the other day and he's like, oh yeah, that works, and he has kind of his experience with these types of things that I don't have. And I like learning from them,
Sure.
from their experience. So I think if somebody had an opportunity to work with a researcher for a season, it would really, really help their experience, I guess. Or,
No, I like that.
Because you just, right, you don't know what you don't know. And
yeah.
And knowing knowing myself well, as well as I know now, I think that type of work would have been good for me. Because like I said, I was a terrible student. I worked hard and I have a great work ethic and things like that. But sitting down and kind of reading the material was never my strong suit. I just rather go work.
Do it. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. So I can easily look back and say, God, I was a terrible student. And I was bad. But here's the other thing, you grow and you learn, and it's like, well, I was so easily distracted,
right.
And I'm still that way. My wife would give me something to do and I'm doing something else already, and it's just, I wish I would have known, I guess, been more self-aware of who I was back then. I think that would help people, I guess, if you know what your strengths and weaknesses are.
Well, yeah, and I think it changes too when you have a focus, right? I mean, I've got 3 boys, and I've told them all, hey, it might not hurt you to kind of take a couple of years to figure out where you want to be before you go to school. I mean, from my experience, that would have been, if somebody would have spoken into my life and said that, I would have wasted a lot less time screwing around with college. But
right.
Yeah.
Yep. So, yeah, I'm the king of that. I mean, I was never, my parents, again, going back to them, they were just never, they never, like pointed me in any direction, or helped me along in that aspect. They didn't push me to go to college or to figure out what I wanted to do, and I know a lot of parents, especially now, do that. They help their, I mean, that's really good advice. I think you gave your kids. It's like, well, if you don't know what you want to do, you can always go to school. You can always figure it out. And so I never knew what I wanted to do, and I didn't have help that way. And part of it was I just didn't know. And, I've had this kind of conversation with myself about knowing what I know about myself and anxiety and poor sleeping habits and things like that. Mm-hmm. And, was this a good career for me? It was. I've had a great career, but I don't know if it was the right career for me. Sure. And my I don't know, myself, I guess, just my personality or my just I don't know, would I choose something else? Maybe, probably. I don't know.
Yeah, and you don't know. But I think one thing you and I have both proven is that you can reinvent yourself. I mean, 20 years ago, you probably couldn't have said, hey, I'm going to be part of the University of Minnesota outreach program for homeowners. So there's lots of opportunities with the building blocks that you've already put in place. And I think that's a great message. I get a lot of people that say, oh, you went to the dark side. And I don't know if you've heard that or not, but it's the other side, right? It's not the dark side.
Okay. All right. Okay. You brought that up. And Do you remember what you said to me about at the Northern Green Expo? It wasn't this last one, but the year
A couple
before,
years ago. Yeah.
right? And remember I said, I couldn't believe I ran into you there.
Yeah.
Just like, wow, I wasn't expecting to see you. And then I saw you. I tweeted that out.
Yeah.
And it was like, wow, that was awesome to see Kevin. And then you asked me about the dark side and the switch that I went to, right?
Yeah.
So it's not the dark side. What is it? You
Yeah.
asked, do you remember that? You asked me
Yeah,
that?
I
Like
do.
come
I
up
do.
with a term for. So I thought about it and I have something for you. And I need to read this off.
Okay.
All right. So this is before I tell you the word, and it's kind of a play on the dark side of things. And
This wasn't planned, by the way. You
no,
kind of we fed
nope,
into the conversation. Perfect.
nope. Okay. So here's the definition of this word: to give someone greater knowledge and understanding about a subject or situation. And so now I'm really doing that with my new role and trying to help the homeowners and just outreach in general. So the word is enlighten.
Hmm.
So the dark side. So I'm the enlightened side.
I like that. I
I
like
don't
that.
know. I don't know. It's something I thought was kind of funny
You're
considering
you're
it was,
you're the chief giver of enlightenment now, right?
yeah, I
I
don't know.
like it.
I'll do my best.
I like it.
Hopefully I give good advice, but
Well, we'll definitely have to keep in touch on what you've learned and your interactions because I think it could definitely help me in my role with the soil conservation district. So
yep, yep. And
we've
I've
talked
and I've
about
learned
that.
a lot, about that. And it's just one of those deals where, going through life, I think, the older we get, the more we have to realize, life is short, right?
Yeah.
We get that, and it's just like, well, I hope I like this job,
Yeah.
and so far so good. And I think also with switching from superintendent, assistant to superintendent to turf research, it's no matter what you do, there's always going to be something you don't necessarily like about your job. There's
Yeah.
just something. So, um,
Yeah, but I think you're a good example that um, nobody's pigeonholed.
yep,
There's tons of opportunities if you're willing to look outside of your little microcosm, right?
yep, hmm
And I think it's inspiring to me that you're not afraid to make a complete paradigm shift in your life, and
yep,
that's pretty cool. Um,
yep.
I told you at the beginning of this that the hour would go pretty quick, and we're over.
Okay, okay,
So
yep.
I don't know if you've ever listened to my podcast portion of the Earthworks podcast, but I try to do a lightning round at the end. You
Okay.
don't. So the rules are you can't think about it. It's just the
Okay.
first thing that pops in your head. But these are pretty specific for you. So it'll be interesting to hear your answer. First one is favorite Seinfeld scene or episode, because I know
Hmm.
we share this love of
Hmm.
Seinfeld, and the next one's Star Wars, of course. So
Yep. Oh man, same. I,
what's the one
I
you
watched.
quote the most?
So I watch Seinfeld a lot, and I still watch it. It's just kind of background noise, and I've actually got my wife to watch it, and she laughs with me, a lot of times. But I think my favorite scene, um, is when, because I've laughed at it so many times, like to tears, is when Jerry starts shaving his chest, and then Kramer comes in. He's like, "You can't keep doing that," and then he's like, it grows in
Don't you
fuller,
know?
thicker, and darker. And he pulls open. He sees, "Look at it! Look at it!" And Jerry's like, "What is that?"
Oh my gosh.
I think that's probably my favorite. Um, and I actually just coincidentally I tweeted out just yesterday. I love Newman too. Newman
Oh, really?
is underrated.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
in Star Wars.
What the favorite episode? What's in your opinion the best episode?
The best the
Because this will
best
get this
is,
will get a bunch of haters out there, I'm sure.
yeah, I still think the best is the second one, um,
Empire.
Empire Strikes
Yeah.
Back. I mean, it just is.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah. All right.
And yep, go ahead.
That's fine. I don't know this one. Beer or wine or nothing. I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely beer. I mean, it
Okay.
has been, with our turf tasting team.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So you and your wife are big time world travelers.
Yep.
Favorite travel destination?
Hmm. I think because of the scope of it, it was Singapore.
Hmm.
And I had mentioned to you pre-film, our friend Gilbert,
Yeah.
who is from Singapore, and he took us there basically, and his brother and family, and his 4 nieces and nephews live there yet. And we spent a week in Singapore, and his brother was basically our chauffeur, taking us to all the sites. It's once, yeah,
That a tourist wouldn't normally see, right?
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Cool.
It was fantastic. Yep.
Okay, last one. Course you'd love to play, but you haven't.
So I gotta just say Cypress Point. It's kind of been on my wish list. I've talked to my wife a long time, many years now, about God, here's Cypress Point. I'd show her photos, and I've met Jeff Markow. He was roommates
Minnesota boy.
with Bill Larson. Yeah,
Yeah.
he was roommates at college with Bill Larson,
Right.
who was at Town and Country Club, and I've met him, and he gave me his business card like, I don't know, 6, 7 years ago, and it's still in my wallet. So,
Okay, so not so humble brag. Troy Flanagan, who also worked
yep,
for Bill,
yep,
has us set up to play on the 25th of May.
nice.
And
The Olympic clubs.
yeah, well, no,
Or are you going to Cyprus?
we're going to Cyprus.
Oh, lucky.
Going to Cyprus, and I put it on our family calendar, and my wife said, "What's this about Cypress Point on the 25th?" I said, "Yeah, Troy's got this set up, and we're going to play." And because he and I and a couple of friends played Seminole a couple of years
Okay.
ago,
Yep.
and that was a very special treat. And Troy said, "We'll do something on the other coast." And I said, "Well, Troy's got this set up," and she goes, "Well, do you have to go?" I said, "This is a non-negotiable."
Yeah.
And that cost me a few points
Yep.
as we approach our 30th anniversary, but that is a non-negotiable. I would agree with you. You get that opportunity, you take that opportunity.
Yeah. Yep. That's fantastic.
Well,
Lucky.
cool. Well, cool. That was good. So I really appreciate you coming on, and I would love to hear more about what your new role is going to bring, and I think your experience is probably going to bridge that gap pretty well, and maybe not be an advocate for the golf industry, but at least show them that that the industry isn't the enemy. It's just another way of doing things. So
Yep. I appreciate having me on. It's been a long time in the making, I
yeah,
guess.
it
Like
has.
you
It
kind of
has.
initially talked, so I appreciate it. And I was definitely nervous coming into this thing, and
Oh, come on. You
yeah,
did
I
fine.
was. But and that's the thing. Part of my new role is public speaking to a certain
Right.
extent, and I've had just last month I had one in Fargo. Talked in front of a group of superintendents about the U of M research and things
Sure.
that we've been doing, and it's you start doing it, you get better at it and
Yeah.
more comfortable. So I knew once we started talking that it'd go okay.
It wasn't that painful, was it?
I asked my wife if she was going to watch this or listen to this, and she's like, "Yeah, I'll listen to it." Okay.
Well, Lisa, he did just fine. So good job.
Thanks a lot,
Gary,
Kevin.
I appreciate you coming on, and just wish you the best of luck in your new
Yep.
endeavor. I think it's a great opportunity, and I'm sure you'll learn as much as the folks you're reaching out to. So
Yep. Appreciate it.
you
Yep.
bet. Best
We'll
of luck.
talk to you later, Kevin.
Thanks.